The manipulation of modern day society. Man, that's a lot right there, isn't it? This could be pretty controversial, actually. So some of the things I'm going to say and highlight, you may not agree with. Some of the things I bring up, I may not completely understand. But I'm just going to do my best to kind of just skim through some of the things I think over history and what continues in the current day to manipulate us on an individual and societal level. And it's a very difficult topic to talk about. Everybody has their own ideas to begin with of how things work. And when you come into a conversation and you try to include as much as possible of the factors that cause influence, you're going to upset someone. So I just want to put that out there, that my objective is not to make people upset, but to just highlight things that I've seen over my lifetime, things that I've come over and across, and questioned, and kind of wonder about at least. Let's just go with that. So first off, I think we need to look at history. What we're told is history, at least, and look at trends and cycles throughout the knowable history. And history is really tricky, It's certainly, there's a lot of things that are concealed, and there's a lot of lies told in the place of truth. And so with all this hidden history, it's very difficult to really know what really happened, especially the further you go back. It just gets more and more concealed. There's lots of various forces in place to manipulate the groupthink. I mean, one of the things that I think of right off the bat is Egypt. I mean, it's so interesting how mainstream scientists say one thing about Egypt and the pyramids, and then you look at the evidence and you see like something totally different. And you see that, wow, this place is probably a lot older than what they're saying. And there's also locations on this planet that are pretty much off limits to most people. Antarctica, at least parts of Antarctica and the interior. And of course, going back to Egypt, I mean, there's certain places in Egypt you just can't go. And, I mean, there's a lot of question marks about what's there, what is it that we're not supposed to know about, Now, let's just kind of I'm not sure if we can dialogue about this really, but we'll try. Secret societies. We know that they exist currently and in the past. That's really not debatable. But what about the plot for world domination? Now, we do know of groups in the past that most of which have disbanded and stuff that were not successful. We do know of countries and dictators and empires, Roman Empire. I mean, like Hitler tried it as well to have world domination. Thankfully, they failed. But yeah, we do know also generational, organized, secret societies that are trying to do the same thing. They want a one world order, one world government. And they don't think small. They think multi-generational, and they're very organized, right? And they do things incrementally on the planet, and they have a lot of influence. And this is something that's really taboo for a lot of people, especially if you consider yourself like a professional in a field. A lot of professionals won't even go here. They just think it's all just ridiculous. But if anyone takes this serious and looks into it, you will find that there are currently secret organizations, secret societies that are actively involved in accumulating more control, the accumulation of all kinds of resources, and they work day and night to manipulate how modern society is. Religions. We know that there are a lot of, very unhealthy lifestyles, religions that are meant to just corrupt and mislead you, to control the masses. Some religions are, more so what I would consider beneficial than not to some degree. But overall, though, religions are, at least they can be seen as control mechanisms. And it's really interesting how religions really do evolve over time. And some people question, well, if truth is truth, and these religions should really be more consistent, but you don't really see that typically. You see that religions of the same type, they evolve. And that to me signals that there's a lot more of a human element than a spiritual or divine element. But that really gets down the rabbit hole. So I'm going to pull back here, and I'm just going to say that when religions started to get into control and they were kind of, manipulating the masses in the past history, when that stopped though, or at least it started to slow to a large degree, governments came in to replace the religions. And in a way, it's like religions were the government. Let's just go ahead and say that up front. Religions were not only just, the church or the group that was in control, but it also represented the government. So, but now though, religions are starting to wane a bit, not everywhere, but in a lot of places in modern day societies, religions and churches, they don't have the power they used to. And this is where government either broke away from the religions or they just kind of came about on their own as an independent, medium of control of the people. So governments picked up pretty much where religions had control. And what we're seeing now is that governments are having a problem, a pretty good sized problem when it comes to controlling the people. And we're now at that point, though, that governments really try to influence us using fear and violence. These are just tools of the oppressor, if you ask me, because they're running out of options. And there's always a boogeyman. There's always some kind of conflict or war that they have to keep pushing in our face. So because they're losing control, losing respect. The deep state is just filled with secrets. I'm not so sure if anyone truly understands completely what the deep state is, but they do, from what I understand and how I can imagine this, hold a large plethora of technologies. Suppressing technology is probably a very large aspect of the deep state. And they lie. They lie, and they have campaigns to manipulate truths. And they may tell you half the truth, but then they tell you other half as lies to cover up the true capabilities and potential that we all have and society has. So they lie about what science is in the present and how things really are. I mean, we can just look at some of the theories that they keep pushing, even to this day, in modern day science. Evolution. I mean, it's just not provable. It's just ridiculous. I mean, look at it on any level and it falls apart. I mean, most scientists now are really heavily questioning it. I mean, I hope they do, because it's really ridiculous. That we're supposed to have come from some type of random chaos, random chance, and we came from minerals from rocks, and that evolved into amino acids and all of that. It's just so ridiculous. The whole thing doesn't work. And if you really challenge it and you really take it back, it's more of just like a cult-like religion. And so it's not science. The moon landings, we may have gone to the moon, but I really don't see much evidence of what they told us, like in the Apollo missions, for example. That's not very good evidence. Looks like it's a lot of camera tricks and a lot of questions. There's a lot more questions than answers, and it's very unsettling. So, I mean, what's up with that? Why all the lies? Why all the lies about nutrition? I mean, how hard is it to really figure out what's good nutrition and what's not? You would think that would just be kind of common sense, but most people do things that are very dangerous to their body because they don't have a clue about nutrition. Mainstream science, mainstream medicine filled with lies. And, there's no wonder people are so sick and they're so confused. What about satanic cults? I mean, if we're going to talk about all the levels of manipulation in modern day society, satanic cults are really there. I mean, look at people. Atheism is spreading everywhere. You got Masons all over the place. And I'm not saying that all Masons even know what they're doing, but those who get higher up in their order, in their lodges, they become pretty aware that it's all about Luciferian activity, about the Illuminati. These things are real. And there's a lot of people who just find more comfort in saying that they're not. But these things have a lot of influence. They turn people away from God, and they really confuse a lot of people. The Federal Reserve here in the U.S. I mean, what? I mean, how is that even allowed? But it is. Just like the International Monetary Fund, lots of manipulation through currency that really affects people all around the world. It affects governments. It affects your buying power, your savings, capability. The Federal Reserve does a really good job on messing with interest rates, and just over time they've really devalued the dollar to the point that it's really pitiful compared to what it was. What about the intelligence over the people? The Pentagon, CIA, military intelligence. I mean, that's just here in the U.S., and there's a whole series of alphabet soup that I haven't mentioned. All this surveillance over the people, in the name of safety. I mean, where's the privacy? Where's our constitutional rights? Well, you just don't see them anymore. They're pretty much gone. You don't even really have a right to privacy. If you think that you're having a private conversation on your phone, yeah, good luck with that. There is no such thing as a private conversation anymore. The military industrial complex. This one's interesting. The military industrial complex is really like a web between private contractors and the military and various nation states. A lot of this stuff is classified. A lot of the secrets, though, are kept in private institutions, in private labs, in private facilities, so that they don't have to be made public. It's easier to do that, to classify, as trade secrets of a company. It's easier to hide that than trying to hide it within government. So some of the really dark stuff, some of the really questionable things that goes on in governments around the world typically is found in the private sector, believe it or not. And it's just, they try to get it out of the government because they really want to conceal it, that much more. Bioengineered warfare projects. I mean, we're seeing it right now. I mean, what do you think COVID-19 is? And keep your eyes open for COVID-21 coming out here in a few months. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens. It's being foretold by a number of whistleblowers in a number of countries right now. People in the know are saying that there's going to be a mutated version of COVID-19 that's going to be a lot more deadly. It's going to come out probably in the first quarter, probably around February of 2021. We'll see if that's true. But we're seeing that there's a lot of indications that COVID-19 is obviously a bioweapon. And this is another way that they manipulate us. I mean, look at all the carnage besides death of people. Look at the destruction of economies, just overall how much debt has accumulated because of this. And there's always people who can, benefit from all this chaos. And you might want to look at who's doing that. The green movement. Oh, yeah. We have to be so concerned about climate. And this whole climate change crisis drama lies is just ridiculous. There's always change in the climate. The carbon dioxide levels are not at some kind of crazy critical level. In fact, the world is more green now than it has been in a long time. I mean, just think, the plants need carbon dioxide to function. And it's amazing they can even function even 100 years ago at those super low levels. It's almost like the plants have been kind of like gasping for air all this time. And even at the levels now, it's not that high. And so this whole carbon climate crisis is just a hoax, and it's ridiculous. Look at it for what it is. I've looked at it for years, and I've compiled massive piles of information, thousands of documents I've probably read over my life on this, and it's all bunk. And all of their, forecast, the professionals in climate, engineering and climate science, they've all been wrong. I mean, everybody from Al Gore to who. They, according to what they've said in the past, a long time ago, we should have had like no ice in the Arctic, and it should be like 400 degrees outside and no ocean because it's supposed to have all evaporated or something. There's all kinds of crazy nonsense. So this whole green movement, was really a push for carbon taxes, another element of control of what you do, another means of manipulation in modern day society. Socialism, and sometimes it's just flat out communist types of expansion and enslavement that we see. We have just an unbelievable amount of human trafficking that's going on around the world. It is really something, especially children, which is just the most despicable and horrendous thing that I can think of, besides abortion and all these other things that go on. The disregard for life, the sanctity of life, is probably the most concerning thing for me. How people kind of just look at, people are just really not worth much or anything at all. There's almost no regard for life. And I see a big push from the globalists to demoralize the population and to promote atheist beliefs, to keep pushing some conflict or war, the never-ending conflict. That's what we see. It's always like the boogeyman. It's always something that we can't really see. But you know what? We got all these terrorists out there. And last time I checked, I don't really see terrorists walking around the streets, doing anything. And so I think there's a lot of false flags. I think Islam is a massive problem that contributes to a lot of the fear because they do crazy things. But I think a lot of this is just false flags and getting us to fight with each other, all this race baiting thing, debt enslavement, it's all this craziness. We have corrupt politicians. We have all this fake news all over the place. No wonder people are anxious, right? Mind control that's been going on. We have all this overexposure of radiation, all the questionable health concerns of 5G. We have the GMO foods that can't be good to be eating all this. Vaccines that have been known to give you a horrendous array of side effects and even to kill people. You got chemtrails, being sprayed in our skies, all kind of aluminum and barium and God knows whatever else. And of course, you have all kinds of gun control that everywhere you look, everybody wants to take your guns because they don't want you to defend yourself from a crazy ass government that is completely out of control. We can see it right now with our own eyes. So I'm just going to stop there because I can continue, but these are just some of the ways that we are being manipulated in modern day society.